Hey, good day, everybody, and welcome back to our Chavruta discussions for this week. We finished on Sunday with the rabbi on lesson 9. Beautiful, beautiful lesson that went through in the Kuzari, went through the details of what was specifically passed on from Adam all the way down to Abraham and to the Hebrew people, the distinction clarified as the image and likeness. Real exciting class for sure. I'm looking forward to today's lesson. But today, Rabbi Goldberg contacted me this morning, and he hasn't put out lesson 10 yet, but he did message me this morning and said to continue with where it was left off from Sunday and go through several passages. I see my Chavruta partner Jacob just arrived, and he has recently moved from France back to the United States. Well, welcome to North America. Let me just say hello to... Oh, he's just getting settled, so... Jacob, how you doing today? Is it all nice and warm there in Idaho?
Yep. It is nice and warm here in Iowa.
Iowa. Forgive me. I wasn't sure. I thought it was, yeah, I get them mixed up. I mean, I'm Canadian, so at least you're closer to my time zone. What time is it there where you are?
It is 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Okay, so we're 2 hours apart now. It's better than the 9 hours when you were in France. I mean, at least we're closer in the same time zone. So, yeah, I sent you an email with the link. I thought, okay, we'll start off with reading that today. I thought Sunday's class, the rabbi really explained so much. Now, folks, you guys listening out there, if you want to join this program with the Noahide World Center, I did put the link down below in YouTube and Facebook where you can sign up, and I know many people have requested Chavruta partners, and they're doing their best to try to pair people up, but people have to be patient and proactive themselves and connect, and I've been honored to connect with Jacob, and it's a joy. He's very committed and dedicated, and it's an honor. So on that note, yeah, I found Sunday's class very, very informative as far as sharing specifically what the Kuzari was trying to get across, exactly what was passed on from Adam all the way down to Abraham, and that specific where it said Adam passed on to Seth after his image and likeness. In other words, there was something specific passed on that wasn't passed on to everybody else. And the Kuzari, the king Al-Khazari, was questioning the rabbi. And so I think I'll start reading right where we left off, and we'll go from there. So on that note, we finished off point 96, which on Safaria shows 102, and then it has the 96 next to it. Al-Khazari says, well, this is the true greatness which descended direct from Adam. He was the noblest creature on earth, therefore you rank above all other inhabitants of the earth. But what of this privilege at the time when that sin was committed, talking about the sin of the golden calf, and how did that affect? So that's an honest and legitimate question from the Khazari king. What happened to that image and likeness when the golden calf happened? The rabbi responds. He says, all nations were given to idolatry at that time, even had they been philosophers discoursing in the unity and government of God. They would have been unable to dispense with images and would have taught the masses that a divine influence hovered over this image, which was distinguished by some miraculous feature. Some of them ascribed this to God, even as we today treat some particular spots with reverence, going so far as to believe ourselves blessed by their dust and stones. Others ascribed it to the spiritual influence of some star or constellation, or of a talisman, or to other things of that kind. So he's explaining a lot about the roots of idolatry and what it actually entailed way back when. The people did not pay so much attention to a single law as to a tangible image in which they believed. The Israelites had been promised that something visible would descend on them from God, which they could follow as they followed the pillars of cloud and fire when they departed from Egypt. Interesting point. This they pointed out and turned to it, praising it and worshiping God in its presence. Thus they also turned towards the cloud which hovered over Moses while God spake with him. And I think he's talking about the tabernacle that was set up. They remained standing and adoring God opposite to it. Now, when the people had heard the proclamation of the 10 Commandments, and Moses had ascended the mount in order to receive the inscribed tables, which he was to bring down to them, and then make an ark, which was to be the point towards which they should direct their gaze during their devotions, they waited for his return, clad in the same apparel in which they had witnessed the drama at Sinai, without removing their jewels or changing their clothes, remaining just as he had left them, expecting every moment to see him return. He, however, tarried 40 days, although he had not provided himself with food, having only left them with the intention of returning the same day. An evil spirit overpowered a portion of the people, and they began to divide into parties and factions. Many views and opinions were expressed, till at last some decided to do like the other nations, and seek an object in which they could have faith without, however, prejudicing the supremacy of him who had brought them out of Egypt. Okay, so they're giving us the Hebrew take on what was going down during that time. On the contrary, this was to be something to which they could point when relating the wonders of God, as the Philistines did with the ark when they said that God dwelt within it. We do the same with the sky and every other object concerning which we know that it is set in motion by the divine will exclusively, and not by any accident or desire of man or nature. Their sin consisted in the manufacture of an image of a forbidden thing, and in attributing divine power to a creation of their own, something chosen by them without the guidance of God. And this is often the problem with people today, something of their own creation. Some excuse may be found for them in the dissension which had broken out among them, and in fact that out of 600,000 souls the number of those who worshipped the calf was below 3,000. For those of higher station who assisted in making it, an excuse might be found in the fact that they wished to clearly separate the disobedient from the pious, in order to slay those who would worship the calf. On the other hand, they had sinned in causing what was only a sin of intention to become a sin of indeed. Very, very important to distinguish. This sin was not on par with the entire lapse from all obedience to him who had led them out of Egypt, as only one of his commands was violated by them. God had forbidden images, and in spite of this, they made one. They should have waited and not have assumed power, have arranged a place of worship, an altar, and sacrifices. This had been done by the advice of the astrologers and the magicians among them, who were of the opinion that their actions, based on their ideas, would be more correct than the true ones. That's usually when people err, based on not having all the information. They resembled the fool of whom we spoke, who entered the surgery of a physician and dealt out death instead of healing to those who came there. At the same time, the people did not intend to give up their allegiance to God. On the contrary, they were, in theory, more zealous in their devotion. They therefore approached Aaron, and he, desiring to make their plan public, assisted them in their undertaking. For this reason, he is to be blamed for changing their theoretical disobedience into a reality. The whole affair is repulsive to us, because in this age the majority of nations have abandoned the worship of images. It appeared less objectionable at that time, because all nations were then idolaters. Had their sin consisted in constructing a house of worship of their own and making a place of prayer, offering, and veneration, the matter would not have been so grave, because nowadays we also build our houses of worship, hold them in great respect, and seek blessing through their means. We even say that God dwells in them and that they are surrounded by angels. If this were not essential for the gathering of our community, it would be as unknown as it was at the time of the kings, when the people were forbidden to erect palaces of worship called heights. The pious kings destroyed them, lest they be venerated beside the house chosen by God, in which he was to be worshipped according to his own ordinances. There was nothing strange in the form of the cherubim made by his command on the top of the they call it the mercy seat on the ark. In spite of these things, those who worshipped the calf were punished on the same day, and 3,000 out of 600,000 were slain. The manna, however, did not cease falling for their maintenance, nor the cloud to give them shade, nor the pillar of fire to guide them. Prophecy continued spreading and increasing among them, and nothing that had been granted was taken from them, except the 2 tables which Moses broke. But then he pleaded for their restoration. They were restored, and the sin was forgiven. Any comments on that, Jacob? The long paragraph for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a pretty thorough explanation of their version of events at the time of the golden calf. I'm sure the rabbi will expound. Yeah.
I have a question about where it says there was nothing strange in the form of the cherubim made by his command. I mean, it doesn't really explain that. That's kind of my question. I suppose that because the form of the cherubim is that they are
a graven image of sort, yeah. And
I know.
The specific command was you not make any graven images, and they were permitted to make the cherubim, which were technically a graven image. Is the point I think he was making? In other words,
his own ordinances. Yeah. I see.
Yeah, so their logic was, well, if that's permissible, why can't we do something else? It's, I've heard some explanations on the cherubim on top of the ark that the way their wings were pointed upward and outward, and although they faced each other, their faces were turned away from each other. And I heard one rabbi explain that they were representative of a Torah scholar, so they don't stare each other down. It's not a question of questioning each other, but they looked away. Yeah. But their direction was towards the center, which is where the high priest would go in once a year and try to appease the sins of the former year, but it's an interesting concept. I mean, I think what the point in this long paragraph that they're trying to get across is that the whole world at that time was very idolatrous, in a simple sense, that they venerated images and and ascribed things to stone and wood and metal and that but all the while keeping in mind that God was above all that, but I think the whole notion of having graven image tends to allow that anthropomorphism to enter the human mind, and imagination can take off in the wrong direction, and it begins to fail for sure.
Yeah. So but still, I don't know that the Ark of the Covenant was made at the time of the sin of the golden calf,
or shortly after.
I don't think.
So I think Kuzari, the rabbi's explaining it after the fact. Right,
but that's why. It was my understanding that the sin of the golden calf in some way necessitated a more elaborate system of atonement. For example, the para aduma, the red heifer, which we read about in this week's parasha, and maybe it was so this week's. Yeah, I think it's this week's. The coming weeks, and the even the tabernacle. It seems.
Yeah, I've heard
that,
rabbis say that had that not happened, the sin of the golden calf, maybe the whole tabernacle and temple may not have been necessary. It comes down to what Hashem's teaching humanity and taking them to a higher level. If they had fulfilled what was given at that point, certain things would have been unnecessary, but or not needed further explanation. And I think, yeah, you had the tabernacle came because of the shortfall or weakness of humanity, and it was meant to address that shortfall. And I find, the whole. I've heard one rabbi say the whole point was to legislate. Of the Torah past that point was to legislate against making the same mistakes of the past. So understanding the temple and the sacrificial system had to do with repairing the sins of that they had formerly committed, and it's basically tutoring them out of a former primitive way of thinking, for sure. But I'm sure the rabbi will explain a lot more on Sunday.
Yeah, Mike, I just have a lot of questions about these verses here. It says, "Lest they be venerated beside the house chosen by God." So my question is the house itself to be venerated? Is the temple, the tabernacle itself? I mean, venerate, first of all, veneration doesn't, English, it's not necessarily the same as worship.
It's a big paragraph. I'm trying to find the point.
It's somewhere in the middle.
I think there, it's like any shortfall, somebody always tries to justify their action and say, well, we didn't take it this far. And I think he's just trying to point out the mindset of humanity on how far people will take things. I find when it comes to sinful behavior, the ability of humanity, given legitimate free choice, often sinful behaviors are compounded, stacked. It can be, sin to the point of filth, and sadly, the creative ability of our God-given ability of free choice is for that reason of choosing closeness to Hashem, and Hashem's Torah gives us the direction towards Him and His desire, but the other side is negativity, and sin can compound, sin on top of sin on top of sin, right to utter filth and distortion. I mean, the deviancy in the human mind is a dark thing, and I think so when they're talking about, well, we didn't take it that far by building temples, but he did point out how those high places were.
Look, can I read something about that, Dan?
Sure, you can.
So it says. This is okay. So it says, we even say that God dwells in them. I believe it's talking about synagogues. I'll just go back a couple of lines.
Synagogues are houses. Yeah.
Nowadays, we also build our houses of worship, hold them in great respect, and seek blessing through their means. We even say that God dwells in them, and that they are surrounded by angels. If this were not essential for the gathering of our community, it would be as unknown as it was at the time of the kings, when the people were forbidden to erect places of worship called heights. The pious kings destroyed them, lest they be venerated beside the house chosen by God, in which he. So that's where I read the declaration. And then he goes on to say there was nothing strange about the cherubim. So I think the idea that I see here is that it's not a total depravity. There is something there.
A line crossed, but yeah, not they weren't sold into it. I think the point they're trying to get across is that out of 600,000, it was less than 3,000 people that were truly involved in veneration of the golden calf. And
right, yeah, but this is problematic for me. This is a bit problematic because it seems like what he's saying is that
it's the nature of humanity to
that. Well, you know, like on Shabbat, the idea is that the Shekhinah comes, you welcome it on Shabbat, you turn to the entrance, towards the entrance of the synagogue to welcome the presence of God on Shabbat, and they sing L'Chadodi, and it's a very integral part. And when he says, if this were not essential for the gathering of our community, it would be unknown.
Purpose, yeah.
And so
communities gather around a purpose usually, and for a reason and a purpose. I mean,
but Dan, what I'm trying to say is that when it says we even say that God dwells in that, that's what I find a bit problematic, is that it seems like he's saying, well, we say that, but the only reason that we say that is because it is essential for our community to feel that. But it seems like I don't know if you're getting
well, it's a mental aspiration for sure, and I think often people try to commune for reason and for purpose. And around the religious mindset, you know, I've seen so many in I don't want to, you know, bring up Christianity again, but in my time there I've seen so many breakfast cereal Christians, nuts, fruits, and flakes, and you know, you couldn't go out for a group meal without them getting all flowery in public. And I don't know why, but some part of humanity has a natural bent to overemphasize religious, just religious garb, let's just say. And when it comes to intent at the personal level, I'm sure when a legitimate Jewish person practicing Shabbat, it's a very solemn and holy time. From my understanding, it's a question of intimacy with Hashem, and so I don't try not to look at another person's intimacy between them and Hashem.
No, I have absolutely no problem with it. I'm just actually looking at what he says, because I mean, this is I think
he's trying to get across the point that it was common behavior or practice amongst most people, and he's stressing, starting off, that the whole world was filled with idolatry. But it comes down to a question of what exactly is idolatry, and where is the line crossed? And you know, as
I just don't see why he brings in the present time. I don't understand why he does that. That's what's confusing to me, is that
well, maybe as we continue, he'll clarify.
Oh, we haven't. Yeah, we got to continue. Well, okay. just real quick, Dan, because it says here, I think I found the answer. So I just want to say it, that it was at the time of the so it says at the time of the kings. One second.
And they knock down the high places. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be as unknown as it was at the time of kings. dot dot dot, lest they be venerated beside the house chosen by God. So there is no earthly temple here, and so it seems like what he's suggesting is that actually, because there's no, it's implied that because there's no temple, that the synagogue is, and yeah, the synagogue is appropriate. And I think there's a halacha also that at a certain time there, what the private altars were okay at a certain time when the temple had not yet been fixed in Jerusalem. So, anyways, that's maybe he'll deal with that in the next section.
Perhaps, yeah. I think he's trying to stress the point that it's follow Hashem's path, not make up your own. And too often humanity has that tendency to think, well, it sounds good to me, it's okay, I want to do it, I like it, and they do it, and it may not be required. And the elements that can constitute creating a new religion are so slight. And yet, I think he's trying to warn us away from some of that. So, let me go on with what the Kuzari says in point 98, 104. It says, El-Kuzari says, the theory I had formed and the opinion of what I saw in my dream, thou now confirmest. Because remember, the original question of the Kuzari's dream, that basically his belief was good, but his practice was not. He says, viz. That a man can only merit divine influence by acting according to God's commands, and even were it not so, most men strive to obtain it, even astrologers, magicians, fire and sun worshippers, duelists, etc. Do you want to read, the next one's another long one. Do you want to read 105.99?
Sure. The rabbi. Thou art right. Our laws were written in the Torah by Moses, who had them direct from God and handed them down to the masses assembled in the desert. There was no necessity to quote any older authority with regard to the single chapters and verses, nor with regard to the description of sacrifices, where and in what manner they were to be offered up, and what was to be done with
normal to them, everyday life,
and what was to be done with the blood and the limbs, etc. Everything was clearly stated by God, as the smallest matter missing would interfere with the completeness of the whole thing. It is here, as in the formations of nature, which are composed of such minute elements that they defy perception, and if their mutual relation suffered the smallest change, the whole formation would be damaged. That plant or animal or limb would be imperfect and non-existing. In the same manner, the law prescribes how the sacrificed animal should be dismembered, and what should be done with each limb that should be eaten, and what should be eaten, burnt, and who should eat and who burn, and which section of priests should have the charge of offering it up, and which dared not. It also prescribed in which condition those who brought the offerings must be, so that they should be faultless, both as regards appearance and apparel, especially the high priest who had the privilege of entering the place of divinity, which enclosed God's glory, the ark, and the Torah. To this are attached the rules for cleanliness and purity, and the various grades of purification, sanctification, and prayer, the description of which would lead us too far. In all these matters, they had to rely on the reading of the Torah, combined with the traditions of the rabbis, based on God's communications to Moses. In the same manner that the form of the tabernacle was shown to Moses on the mountain, vis-a-vis the tabernacle, the interior, candlestick, the ark, and the surrounding court, with its pillars, coverings, and all appurtenances, were caused by God to appear to him in their real shape, in the form of which he commanded to have them executed. In the same way was the Temple of Solomon built according to the model revealed to David. So also will the last sanctuary promised us be shaped and arranged according to the details seen by the prophet Ezekiel. The service of God, there is no arguing, reasoning, debating, had this been possible. Period. Had this been possible, philosophers with their wisdom and acumen would have achieved even more than Israel.
Wow. What a statement. I think that really clarifies Judaism in a nutshell. I like how it says virtually it became second nature to them. There was no reason to question. They understood the order, and it's like anything, when you do something several times, it becomes a habit, and then after so many more times, it becomes part of your lifestyle. It becomes second nature, and you end up functioning. So I think that's the point he's really trying to get across. There was no reason to question the intricacies. It's the way they were shown, and they integrated and repeated and cyclically continued along that path for a long time, it sounds like. And there was no question, right down to the time where David and Solomon built the second temple. It followed the same pattern. I like specifically how when he talked about the sacrifices, how they knew which part, which limbs, and who they were for, and who could partake and who couldn't, and what had to be completely burned. I've seen commands in the of the building of the temple. I heard Rabbi Skobek talk about the ramp that went up because they were commanded no steps were permitted up to the altar, and so they had to have a ramp. They had to get up there. So the ramp, it's a question of following Hashem's will, and so often we see people, they want to do it their way, and I've seen people that are so stubborn that if you give them two choices, they'll create a third. They just don't want somebody else dictating or giving them options, so they make it up themselves, and they wonder why their lives are just fluttering like through time, like without any purpose or direction or guidance. But I think the way he clarifies that it became second nature, and there was no need to question it.
It's the thing about it being second nature. Al-Kuzari 98 says man can only merit divine influence by acting according to God's commands, and even were it not so, most men strive to obtain it, even astrologers, magicians, etc. So that's my question: is maybe this was maybe in our day and age it's different, because
that's a very good point, Jacob. I remember in early Genesis where it says and God said, I think it's Genesis 1:26, where Hashem said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And I've heard arguments or debates. Who's he talking to? And I after having so many back and forth discussions over decades on early Genesis, I said at one point, look at it as a divine program, if you will. Let us make man in our image. And this becomes the drive of everybody, rather than it's what people do. Even the ungodly try to make their children in their image, whatever they believe or think their kids ought to be. And so I looked at it more from a programming type of view. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, is more like a drumbeat that people follow. And I think in 98, that's kind of what he's talking about, that man can only merit divine influence by acting according to God's command. And even were it not so, most men strive to obtain it. In other words, when it comes to living life, people all want to feel winners. Everybody wants to imagine themselves in the right path. Even the atheists,
so that's
they think they're living an upright life or a moral life. I mean, people want to dictate their own standard of morality. But I think Hashem's trying to get across there's a higher standard, and his ways are not our ways, and his thoughts are not our thoughts, far above. And yet the Torah over and over and over Tanakh proves to be on such a high, heavenly elevated status of standard that the human mind alone cannot achieve. And
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
So what you're saying basically is that this applies to people who don't even believe in God because divine influence is all around us, basically, so that atheists are also indirectly trying to merit divine influence through a circuitous route that
Yeah,
maybe they're
yeah,
or
they're trying to
a rich
mold
man
the
who wants
world
to
the
get
way
money.
they think it should be, and this is where I'm pretty. I'm sure that Hashem knows the intent of a person's heart. If a person's aiming for a specific direction, for a specific reason, and their actions are performed based on their own motive, there's repercussions in this world, and I don't think. I like how he cited all the way down to the prophets Ezekiel sharing, it passed all the way down through the time Solomon built it, even to Ezekiel. When Ezekiel mentioned the heavenly chariot, I believe there's an order of function that Hashem has put into play for heaven and earth, and the roads that connect them are to be decipherable, but only permissible according to Hashem's ways. And often, so many people want to do things a different way, their way, and sadly, I don't like to use the word wrong as much as correct. And I like towards the end of that paragraph you read where it even talked about degrees of purity and what made pure and how they had to approach impurity. And it's a question of the higher standard of what holiness is. And I think it begins to paint in the picture in a human mind the exalted loftiness of the greatness of Hashem and what creation is. Yet, sadly, too often we get clouded by the simplest of things in this world, and we're not functioning according to his method of operation. And it's profound that as old as I'm getting, I find there's always a better way, and often, no matter how much IQ I try to throw into something, if my thoughts are off, I find, I get a lesson like this weekend for me was several, I did about 14, 16, 18 hours of lessons on this weekend with rabbis, and picked up some great stuff that just simplified a personal problem or dilemma, something that I was maybe struggling with and not able to see past. And, one phrase, I feel like, I never thought of it. And it's like the ways of Hashem are pure in a way that is beyond... I find things in this world really cloud our a view of the simplicity and the pure, legitimate way Hashem would have humanity function. Making the world a better place shouldn't be as difficult as some people make it, but yeah.
So he answers this question with this very detailed view of all the service and all this these minute details. And I think that the kind of disconnect between these astrologers, magicians, fire and sun worshippers, dualists, is that they take one element, they take certain elements, and they focus on that, and they
It's
don't
misguided,
have
misdirected. Yeah.
yeah, it's misguided, and it has to do with the unity of God, and not seeing seeing the forest for the trees,
Right.
uh, as the saying goes, and you know, kind of this difference between dissociating versus associating. You know, obviously there needs to be separation. You can't someone who just associates becomes a schizophrenic. But so there needs to be separation, there needs to be order, there needs to be delineation. But the unity of the service of Hashem and for example, prayer. Prayer is not just something someone makes up. I mean, obviously you can pray from your heart. There's nothing wrong with that. You can pray from your heart at the appropriate times within what has been received from the uh, well, to use my metaphor, the forest, from not my metaphor, but the metaphor of the divine service of God, the actions which are pleasing for Him, these prayers, the Amidah, the 18 benedictions, they're established by the
Sages. Yeah.
Sanhedrin, and there are three prophets there at least. So
Yeah, they're
prophecy is
incorporating
involved.
a broader
Yes.
spectrum of the wholeness. Yeah, for sure,
And then
and
sacrifice,
purity.
just one more thing about sacrifice is that this notion is also mentioned by Rambam, that sacrifice in the temple service in the tabernacle is in a sense a concession to our weakness, and in a way prayer is superior. It's not really it's not the same, and one is not necessarily superior to the other, but it is a something that I would encourage everyone to seek, to connect to Hashem in prayer in the proper way, and
A
that's why, for
non-religious
example,
way. I think this lesson today has really shown us the difference between a false religious mindset rather than a relationship.
well, no, I disagree. It's not non-religious, but it's according to Judaism. It's according, for example, the Brit Olam, the prayer book that Rabbi Cherki wrote for Noahides. It
Yeah,
follows the order of the Amidah, the Shema, but it has been adapted
yeah, I got it right here on my
for
desk.
for non-Jews, and so the law prescribes how uh, you should pray, and it's not. Yeah, of course, it's not only by rote. There's places uh, in it, specific places that you can add your own prayers, but by not just doing your own thing, as many of us learned to do in Christianity, or we left the church and we went into, whatever it was, Hebrew roots, or whatever it was, messianic stuff, or whatever, and now then we just kind of were making it up as we went along, and that's also not,
Prescribed. Yeah.
yeah, that's not prescribed. So finding the concession to that instinct, that instinct is not all, there's not all bad or all good, but channeling those raw
Yeah, I always, for
emotions.
me, Jacob, I have to understand the why behind it. And the more I probe the beauty of the sages' literature, the more it's like, there's a reason for it. And even the prayers, why they're prescribed. Why did the sages prescribe them in a specific way? And the why behind it is at such a level of honesty and purity of heart before Hashem that, if you don't just follow it as they intended, you're missing out on the whole why. And Hashem knows your heart, and he also, though, wants to draw you closer to himself in a genuine sense. But that sense has got to be a real connection based on the tools, who you are, and he wants, he knows you intimately all your days and everything about you before you were born, and so the depth of eternity, just to imagine, it's profound. But let me see if I can get one more. I'll read the next one. Because Al-Kuzari responds, he says, "Thus the human mind can accept law cheerfully and unhesitatingly, without doubting that a prophet would come to the oppressed and enslaved people and promise them that they would be at an appointed time, thus and without delay, be delivered from bondage. Moses led them to Palestine against 7 nations, each of which was stronger than they were, assigned to each tribe its portion of land before they reached it. All this was accomplished in the shortest space of time and accompanied by miraculous events. This proves the omnipotence of the sender as well as the greatness of the messenger, and the high station of those who alone received this message. Had he said, 'I was sent to guide the whole world in the right path,' and would only have partially fulfilled his task, his message would have been deficient, since the divine will would not have been carried out completely." That's a huge point. The perfection of his work was marred by the fact that his book was written in Hebrew, which made it unintelligible to the peoples of Sind, India, and Khazar. They would therefore be unable to practice his laws till some centuries had elapsed, or they had been prepared for it by changes of conquest or alliance, but not through the revelation of that prophet himself, or of another who would stand up for him and testify to his law.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think he's forming in the Khazar king's mind the beauty of the manner in which Hashem had the sequence of events of their history laid out to take it beyond a level of any scrutiny, and yet skeptics.
But this is the king. This is the king.
Yes.
Oh, so okay, because you're saying that this he's but it seems like his understanding is not. There's something flawed, I think, still in his understanding.
Well, a little bit, but he is getting the point that Hashem was not sent to the whole world in that regard, but he proves the omnipotence of the sender as well as the greatness of the messenger and the high station of those who alone received his message. He says, had he said, "I was sent to guide the whole world in the right path," and would only have partially fulfilled his task, his message would have been deficient. What a statement. I mean, so often, people want everything. They want the booty in this world and the world to come, and they don't realize that is a flawed soul desire. I mean, one thing I find most profound from the Jewish people is how people can learn to be thankful even with the tests in life and the struggles that we go through, rather than just the blessings. And it's nice to have abundance, but yeah, go ahead.
So, but my issue is with the sentence, "The perfection of his work was marred by the fact that this book was written in Hebrew, which made it unintelligible to the peoples of Sind, India, and Khazar."
I think he's making that statement to validate that it was not given to the entire world, or he's distinguishing what was given to the Jewish people as opposed to the whole world. So there is, and I know as this progresses, He even makes in, I think it's about 115, a comment to the converts that there's a certain limit to what they partake. Like they don't partake, even converts don't partake of the divine afflatus that as is described in this session. I was hoping we could get to that point today, but I think the time's ticking by. Your point is valid for sure.
Well,
You
just
want to read
looking at it.
the next
No, hold on
couple?
one sec. Just real quick, I just want to dwell on this for a second because I think that if he knew it, he doesn't know yet, but we talked about this last week, that actually the Torah was offered to the other nations as well, and they said no, and so the maybe the result seems like, oh well, now it's just in Hebrew, now it's just for them, but I think that that's a miss. It's like you're not seeing really what the problem, the issue was, which is that the nations were not ready to receive the Torah. They were not in the right state, and so it's not the fact that it was written in Hebrew. I just have an issue with the idea that the perfection of his work could be hard. I don't think that's and so this is maybe a bigger issue, is that
in the context of if it was sent to the whole world, why was it in the Hebrew tongue? I think is more his point, but not that he's calling it deficient. I don't believe.
Yeah. Well, it would actually be a positive thing if actually giving it to them and making them responsible for it by giving it to them and saying, well, so actually it says in the Gemara that
the kingdom of priests, a light to the nations.
No, but you have to go through that kingdom of priests. You can't just say, oh well, I want to do the Torah. I'm doing my own thing. Do my own thing. You have to actually, because the nation, not you, but the nations actually rejected the Torah. When he went to Paran, he went to Seir. All the other nations said no. So part of the actual perfection of his work is that he made the repairing of that rejection. Well, now you have to go through the Hebrew people.
Right. There's a process of certain things, certain deficiencies that got to be taken out before you can actually get to another step. And so often, the purity that is required is not there amongst the rest of the world. And I think, there's certain things that the rest of the world has to learn in order to be prepared to grasp the next stage for sure. But you need the kingdom of priests and to transfer that light to the nations. And for sure.
Well, he doesn't address the idea of the perfection, the problem in the perfection. I think he's being polite. He's not.
Well, he is the king. He is
he's the king. He's the king.
He is the king, and the rabbi is explaining his case.
Right.
And
he doesn't want
extended dialogue while El-Kuzari's in his own. Let's just picture him sitting in his boardroom or throne room, and he's in this comfortable position for sure.
You don't just say no. You don't just say no to the king. You're wrong. This is going to be okay. So let's continue, like you said.
Yeah, if you want to read 101 there, 102 at least.
All right. The rabbi. Moses invited only his people and those of his own tongue to accept his law, while God promised that there should at all times be prophets to expound his law. This he did so long as they found favor in his sight and his presence was with them. Al-Kuzari. Would it not have been better or more commensurate with divine wisdom if all mankind had been guided in the true path?
That's
and then his reply is almost like a zinger.
Yeah, do you want to read 109 or shall I?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, 109, 103. The rabbi says, Or would it not have been best for all animals to have been reasonable beings? Imagine, if all animals could speak, is what he's talking about. Thou hast apparently forgotten what we said previously concerning the genealogy of Adam's progeny, and how the spirit of divine prophecy rested on one person who was chosen from his brethren and the essence of his father. It was he in whom this divine light was concentrated. He was the kernel, whilst the other were as shells which had no share in it. The sons of Jacob were, however, distinguished from other people by godly qualities, which made them, so to speak, an angelic caste. Each of them, being permeated by the divine essence, endeavored to attain the degree of prophecy, and most of them succeeded in doing so. Those who were not successful strove to approach it by means of pious acts, sanctity, purity, and intercourse with prophets. Know that he who converses with a prophet experiences spiritualization during the times he listens to his oration. He differs from his own kind in the purity of soul, in a yearning for the higher degrees and attachment to the qualities of meekness and purity. This was a manifest proof to them and a clear and convincing sign of reward hereafter. For the only result to be expected from this is that the human soul becomes divine, being detached from material senses, joining the highest world, and enjoying the visions of the divine light, and hearing the divine speech. Such a soul is safe from death even after its physical organs have perished. If thou then findest a religion, the knowledge and practice of which assists in the attainment of this degree, at the place pointed out, and the whole conditions laid down by it, this is beyond doubt the religion which ensures the immortality of the soul after the demise of the body. And the Al-Kuzari replies, the anticipation of other churches are grosser and more sensual than yours. The rabbi says, they are none of them realized till after death, whilst during this life nothing points to them.
Okay, so wait, Dan. So basically what we were saying last week is basically confirmed in this, that this spiritualization process, this possibility of people who are not Jewish,
legitimate connection,
to have a legitimate connection. I mean, it's kind of so obvious that, well, maybe it's not obvious from the text until this point. It's something basically that Brit Olam and the Noahide movement is part. That's what it's. This paragraph is kind of what it's about, and the connection with the prophet, like the rabbi said, is not prophet in our day and age, but the connection with the next best thing, with the sages of Israel and with the Jewish people and with the Torah.
I like how Rabbi used the match and candle analogy, how you strike the match and you put it near the candle's wick, and then the candle lighting other candles. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff.
I mean, in a way, when we read the prophets, in a way we are conversing. I mean, we're not talking with them, but the Torah is, the discourse of the prophets, and or specifically Moses, and then going on, the sages, etc. But just this one thing I want to draw attention to here is that it is what does it say? He differs in his yearning. He differs from his own kind. So there we have the suggestion that we're not talking about Jews. We're talking about Jews. And in a yearning for the higher degrees, and attachment to the qualities of meekness and purity, this was a manifest proof to them and a clear and convincing sign of reward hereafter. So I can't help but thinking of like Jethro, right? He goes to in one sense, he's going to his children, right? So you think, oh, well, that's down a level, right? But he has this meekness and this purity and this longing and this desire to attach to God and to his people that leads him to humble himself, to leave his home, to go through the desert, and to meet his son-in-law, uh, you know, and so yeah, that's a good way to that's a person who I think of.
Yeah, let's face it, everybody's always looking for a better way, but then also they want to know the entirety of the best way. And often I find, you can't digest the whole thing all at once. You need to go little by little, step by step, growth by growth, development. I mean, to understand purity, I did hear that, like to be refined like silver. They refine it as much as 7 times, and then after the 7th purification, it can no longer hold any impurity. It's perfectly refined. So to be refined like silver is to go through so many times that you can no longer adopt impurity. And people that want to know it all, and they want it, it's not like we live in a day and age where people have navigation systems in their vehicle. They want to be able to punch in the destination and get the direct route. And that's an oversimplification when it comes to life, because often it's more a marathon and not a sprint. And truly live in purity, you got to savor the moment. You can't just chase the end destination. I remember in Christianity, a lot of them had what I called a finish line mentality. They think they had got the golden ticket out of the Willy Wonka bar, and it's their mind's only on the finish line, has nothing to do with how they're functioning today and how they're living. If they're 30 years old today and they plan to live to 90, well, what are you doing for the next 60 years? If you've already got the golden ticket, you better die tomorrow, and that way they miss the whole point of living. And I've seen people that just don't know, they've got no life, in the sense that there's nothing emanating from who they are as a person. And it's difficult for some people to just be full of life. And others, if you've got it, share it, and make the world a better place with the tools you've been given. So I don't know. What do you think, Jacob? That's probably a good point where we can stop. And I can tell Rabbi that we reached up to 106. Yeah, I was hoping to get a little bit further, but you know what? There's long chunks in that section. But
did he tell you how much he was in? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
How are you settling in there?
Oh, good, very good. I mean, at first, got a bit jet lagged, but it's nice to see family and feeling right at home. So.
Wow.
With my in-laws.
In Iowa, and it's weather's nice. I see you got a t-shirt, so it's summer weather. I mean, we're gonna hit probably 98 degrees Fahrenheit here today. It's hot where I am right now. Hot summer for sure. But Jacob, you are appreciated. Just know you're appreciated. I'm glad we were able to get together. And I got at 4 a.m. my time, I got a message from the rabbi. He's been swamped at in Jerusalem, booked all day and all night. He's got meetings, so he dropped me a message just to say, look, just go ahead with from where we left off on Sunday and read a few of the paragraphs, and I'm glad to have you on board to be able to at least bounce a few things back and forth. I know I almost at the stage personally where it don't matter what I think the thing's actually saying. The rabbi's going to share something on Sunday that'll blow my mind on the passage, and so at least we can safely say we made it up to point 106. I'm making a note here, so I'll send it to him in the text. So we got through 10 points, and it's good enough for this week. I don't know what he'll put in the lesson. It might not be out till tomorrow, but it might only cover 6, and we went through 8 or 10. But he knows his material, and they're broken down in chunks to reveal certain essentials. And this is why I, like you were saying, to get the light, you got to have it from the source, and you don't make it up as you go along. I'm honored that the rabbi gives me the green light to actually put this out there, but we do it, you and I, so that other people, we got hundreds and hundreds of people involved in this program around the planet, and if they can't connect with their Chavruta partner, at least they can review this video of us chatting and be prepared. I mean, it's homework, so the rabbi's given us the homework to prepare it before we get together Sunday with our Chavruta session, and the rabbi gives us the explanations as has been handed down. So I look forward to hearing that on Sunday. So you okay? We'll sign out for today.
Yep, sounds good. See everyone. See you then.
All right. Until next time, join us on Sunday when we meet and go over the same material with Rabbi Goldberg. And keep an eye out for those involved in the class for his lesson. He may cover these 10 points that we covered today. It might be a few more, a few less. Just know we're trying to do our due diligence. And So till next time, have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.